Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for a webinar on using ChatGPT as a process of evaluation. Our presenter today is Jeffrey Jackson of Columbus State University. My name is Sidra, and I'll be your moderator today for Hawks Learning. We will have a live Q&A session after the presentation, so please enter any questions you have into the Q&A module as we go, and we'll be sure to answer them at the end. I'll now hand it over to our presenter.
Good afternoon, or rather good morning. Thanks, Sidra, and thanks, Hawks Learning, for the opportunity. Today, I want to go through a demonstration of ChatGPT as a source of evaluation. In my English composition classes, the English composition 2, I've decided to kind of discover the joys of using ChatGPT, or rather, use critical thinking as a form of inquiry and as a form of evaluation. So part of today's presentation will cover the actual demonstration. And here's a snippet of our agenda for today. So using ChatGPT as a source for AI generated content. So ChatGPT is a trending source, so it is important that instructors show students how to use it while evaluating its usefulness in the process. So students learn how to evaluate two sources using a traditional source like a scholarly journal article to evaluate a non-traditional source like ChatGPT. So what I'm going to do is I will go through the actual source evaluation essay briefly, and then I will actually go through the process of what we did as a class in terms of the whole ChatGPT demonstration, and then highlighting what we did while we were there, doing an explanation of our findings, and then relating it back to the actual assignment. And then as we conclude, talking about how this is an introduction for students to evaluate academic and non-traditional sources, using experiential learning as a teaching opportunity, and then adding a new teaching strategy for college instructors. All right, so let's proceed with the actual assignment. So keeping in mind that this is an English Composition 2 course and the kind of the level of difficulty, this was a good opportunity to really get students involved in the research process. It was also a good chance to get them elevating and using their critical thinking skills. So part of their paper and what I did is this was a self-guided assignment. So it's really helpful since many instructors, either they prohibit the use of ChatGPT and other AI generated sources, or they allow it with limited use. So for my classes, since it was a kind of a self-guided with, of course, with me being involved in the process, I had students actually generate their ChatGPT articles in class. So this document here was their final source evaluation essay, where they provided an evaluation of both the ChatGPT article, and they also provided information from that scholarly journal article that they found on the same topic that they had the ChatGPT article based on. So again, this includes the introduction paragraph, including in this particular assignment, they were able to use, again, using that scholarly journal article information to evaluate that ChatGPT article, but I will highlight my main points. So one of the things about this essay is they had to evaluate ChatGPT's ability to address or answer their request or their question. They had to discuss which rhetorical appeal was most prevalent in the scholarly journal article and which one was most prevalent in the ChatGPT article. And then they also had to write a separate paragraph about the pitfalls of using ChatGPT. And all of these paragraphs in the introduction and the conclusion provide step-by-step guidance on what they should include in their papers and how they should evaluate those two sources. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into our ChatGPT demonstration. One second to load that page again. Okay, so while I'm waiting for the page to load, here's what I asked the students. So students were required to sign up for a ChatGPT account. And what we did in class is and I'll share your screen again. And we've been talking about careers and crossroads and intersections of their majors throughout the semester. We've been looking at different majors. So we've been trying to identify some problems, some issues, some challenges, and some barriers within their majors. So that's kind of the starting point of how we got to this actual assignment. So, for example, we were testing out write a 5 paragraph about how nursing shortage has impacted nursing industry between 2017 through 2023. So basically, in class, students tested three different writing prompts with ChatGPT. So pretty much what we wanted ChatGPT to provide an answer to our request, and we wanted to see how well it was with being able to provide those responses. So we noticed, and we actually went through the entire ChatGPT generated response. We noticed some of the pitfalls of using ChatGPT as opposed to using the human brain and using brainstorming as a process. So, for example, in some of these, we noticed when we asked ChatGPT to write a 5 paragraph, sometimes it would write us a 6 paragraph essay. We also noticed that ChatGPT will often give students the same titles back, the same words that they put in their request came back as a title. Also, we noticed that a lot of the introductions are generic and they pretty much sound the same. We also noticed the generalization of information that ChatGPT provides. And then, so we went through each body paragraph and students made a complete list of things that they noticed that ChatGPT did not do, such as providing specific examples or exploring, explaining, and discussing, or making announcements like this essay will explore, for example. So we noticed also whether or not ChatGPT provided thesis statements with main points included and whether or not those points were supported in the body paragraphs. So in class, students individually developed 3 different tests. And part of this process was for me to figure out and for them to figure out how much more specific can you be to get the answers that you want from ChatGPT. So once they did their 3 tests, I asked them to provide for me their best shot. So with the best shot, this was incorporating everything that they've learned about ChatGPT. And this particular assignment took about a whole class period. And then, of course, the class period before that, we did some previewing. So Again, this is a self-guided type activity, especially when instructors are already leery about students using ChatGPT. So it was kind of my opportunity to expose students to ChatGPT, since we know that it is trending and since we know that many employers are actually using this to generate content. So after students provided their best shot, the next part of this assignment was to look at a scholarly journal article that was based on their ChatGPT topic. So during that process, students also learned that ChatGPT also works like your search generators when you go into Google Scholar or Alabama Virtual Library. Students also learned that it is important to go through the brainstorming process before you get into the research. So, one of the values of doing this particular activity is that it boosts confidence with students. So, I'm going to go ahead and go to one of our search engines as an example. And we'll just do this title for the sake of demonstrating. So one of the things are using their Columbus State University library systems or Galileo or any academic database. It's just an exposure to academic resources. So once they found, and I'm going to stop sharing for the sake of my connections not working the way that I want it to. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to shift back to the actual assignment. That was actually the process that we went through. It was, of course, it was more in depth, it was more detailed because I did have students participating in the process. So it really helped in terms of them identifying other things, in particular, that they found that ChatGPT did not support or did not explore, explain, or discuss sufficiently. Are there any questions so far?
Not at this time.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to go back to the essay for just a second. And then I'm going to talk through the process of what students did after after they submitted their chat GPT final test, and then also after they submitted their article, kind of as a walkthrough of this process. So in their introduction as their hook slash attention grabber. So based on a scholarly journal article, what information from the article could be used as a hook slash attention grabber and why? So part of this hook slash attention grabber and this whole assignment was to be able to use a scholarly journal article to evaluate the chat GPT generated article. So this was their opportunity to kind of evaluate information and pick out the best of the best, especially when it came to an attention grabber. And then, so one of the parts of that purpose statement was what were the goals of writing a source evaluation essay about two sources, and I pretty much asked them what's the point. So part of the purpose statement could actually be once they've written the conclusion paragraph, they could actually come back to the purpose statement if they were stuck, as opposed to just regurgitating. The point of this was to look at two sources. Like that part of it is obvious. So I want them to critically think about, what after what they've learned as a result of this process. Now what? So background information was information about their chat GPT article specifically, and then also talking about that journal article and providing them with enough information about both sources to acclimate their readers to their papers. And then they all had the same main 3 points, which was an evaluation of chat GPT's ability to address or answer their request. They had to identify one or two rhetorical appeals that were most relevant in both sources, and then they had to have a body paragraph or paragraphs about pitfalls of using ChatGPT. So although every student had the same 3 points that they had to cover, they could have discussed them differently in each of their paragraphs. And then, so in most cases, to this question, does ChatGPT answer the requested question? I had some students outright say no based on their findings. And then I had some students say yes, and then they had to defend their position of why yes. And then if there were some students who felt it addressed their questions in some way, but not in others, they could also support that as could also support that as well. So these were guided questions to kind of help students write these papers, because again, this assignment was a little different than most other scholarly research papers or essays. It did require them to use ChatGPT, which is, and one of the things that I've noticed, and I showed the class this, I was typing a particular question and I got a dot, and that dot and I got no response. So that was kind of Chat GPT's way of telling me go ask somebody else. So one of the other things about Chat GPT in this particular assignment was really getting students to think about, where does information come from? Who's creating this information? So again, this was a good opportunity to really use Chat GPT and the scholarly journal article as sources of evaluation. And also, I provided them with their works cited entry for using Chat GPT, which is here, and then mentioned to them specifically that Chat GPT has their own unique numbers to their page once they're done with their chats. And I'll show what this looks like in a second. But this is the generic page to get to Chat GPT. All right, so I'm going to share the screen real quick just to show that particular piece. All right, so once I click on any one of my searches, ChatGPT should provide me with my unique number, which it did here. So we have our chat.openai.com, and then everything after that is unique to my particular searches. So it was important for students to capture that. All right, so there's a question from Genio. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. So with an assignment like the one I designed, how are students being asked to generate an in-text citation or works cited when Chat GPT is utilized? Okay, so, and I actually think I just went through it, but it's okay. All right, so with the information that they'll get from Chat GPT, and I'll go back to that real quick. And that's a great question, by the way. And I actually had to look up how MLA mentioned to cite sources using ChatGPT. And again, we just followed this MLA works cited entry where it provided the text of the prompt, and then it mentioned to identify what the prompt was, mentioned Chat GPT, the day, the month, the version was when Chat GPT was launched. Then you have to cite it as OpenAI for the day, month, and a year, which was the date in which they accessed their best shot. And then again at chat.openai.com/chat. And then there's special page numbers that came out afterwards. Our students went back and find couldn't find their, since I had their best shot and they also had a copy of it. For that sake, we just stopped at the chat.openai.com/chat.
Hey, Jeffrey, would you be able to drop the link for that in the chat?
Yes, absolutely. I'm actually gonna see if I can get this entire thing for you. All right, so that pretty much concludes the presentation portion.
All right, if there are any other questions, please go ahead and drop them in either the Q&A or the chat module. I'll give you a minute or so to populate your questions. All right, I guess that is all that we have for today. Thank you, Jeffrey, and thank you all for attending today. We will be emailing you a link to view the recording of this webinar once it's available. If you or any of your fellow instructors are interested in presenting for our Learning and Growing webinar series, please submit your proposals to the Learning and Growing website, which I'm going to go ahead and link in the chat now for easy access. And it looks like we do have a couple of questions. So did this activity change your students' perceptions about using ChatGPT for writing papers?
Yes, they realized that it was easier for them to think for themselves as opposed to having ChatGPT think for them.
Thank you. And then, as you mentioned, ChatGPT can be vague when providing examples, explanations. Did you find that with your students as well?
Yes, and they realized that there were a lot that ChatGPT did not do. In fact, students filled the whole whiteboard up with things that they found based on this activity in class.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. If there are no other questions, thank you all for attending today. These free webinars are brought to you by Hawks Learning, an innovative educational courseware company. To learn more about our mastery-based course materials and how Hawks can enhance learning outcomes for you and your students, please visit hawkslearning.com, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you all. Thank you, Sidra.
No problem. All right, there are no other attendees, so I'm going to go ahead and close out the webinar. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thank you.